Wonders of Norway. The unforgettable beauty of Geirangerfjord. Arrival at Geirangerfjord. The chill in the air struck like a dagger as the ferry docked at Hellesilt, the gateway to the legendary Geirangerfjord. Sophia's knuckles whitened around her suitcase handle as she disembarked. The tour brochure in her pocket promised serene waterfalls and postcard-perfect views. But Sophia wasn't here for tranquility. Her sister, Lena, had vanished 2 weeks ago while hiking near the fjord, leaving behind only a cryptic voicemail. "I found it. But they're watching me." The village was eerily quiet for a summer afternoon. Shops were shuttered, and the only sounds were the distant cry of seagulls and the relentless lap of water against the docks. Sophia's breath fogged as she approached the inn where Lena had stayed. The proprietor, a wiry man with piercing blue eyes, greeted her with a mix of suspicion and pity. "You're her sister," he said, without Sophia needing to introduce herself. His voice was gravelly, as if it had been worn down by secrets. She asked too many questions. The ritual in the woods. That night, sleep eluded her. The moonlight cast an eerie glow on the fjord outside her window, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. Around midnight, a faint sound reached her ears, a rhythmic thudding, like drums echoing across the water. She threw on her coat and stepped outside, the cold biting through her layers. The sound seemed to come from the cliffs. Heart pounding, Sophia followed a narrow path up the hillside, her flashlight carving a path through the darkness. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath her. She tumbled down a steep embankment, landing hard on a patch of moss. Groaning, she pushed herself up and froze. A dozen hooded figures stood in a clearing, their backs to her. They formed a circle around a large stone altar, chanting in a language Sophia didn't recognize. On the altar lay an object shrouded in cloth, pulsing with a faint, otherworldly light. Before she could move, a hand clamped over her mouth. Sophia struggled, but her captor hissed in her ear. "Do you want to die?" The voice was familiar. She turned to see Lena's face, pale and drawn but unmistakably hers. Relief flooded Sophia, but it was short-lived as Lena pulled her into the shadows. "What the hell is going on?" Sophia whispered. "Keep your voice down," Lena snapped. "They'll hear us." She gestured to the hooded figures. "They're protectors of the fjord, or so they call themselves. They're guarding something ancient, something dangerous. The chase begins." The next day, the sisters huddled in Sophia's room at the inn, poring over Lena's notes. They were scattered and cryptic, full of sketches of Norse runes and maps of the fjord's intricate network of caves. One word appeared repeatedly: Ragnarok. "You think they're trying to prevent the end of the world?" Sophia asked skeptically. "Or start it," Lena replied grimly. "The myths talk about a great chain, binding Fenrir, the wolf destined to bring about Ragnarok. What if that key unlocks his prisons?" Sophia wanted to dismiss the idea as absurd, but the memory of the pulsating object and the hooded figure's fervent chanting made her stomach churn. Before they could formulate a plan, a knock at the door interrupted them. The proprietor stood there, his expression unreadable. "You need to leave," he said. "Now." Moments later, the sisters were speeding down a dirt road in a rusted pickup truck the innkeeper had begrudgingly loaned them. The road hugged the fjord's edge, the water's surface churning as if stirred by an unseen hand. Lena's knuckles were white on the wheel, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. "They're following us," she muttered. Sophia turned to see two black SUVs gaining on them, their headlights cutting through the mist. "Faster," she urged, but the truck's old engine protested with every acceleration. The SUVs closed the distance, and soon one was alongside them. A figure leaned out the passenger window, aiming a crossbow. Escape into the forest. The bolt shattered the side mirror, missing Sophia by inches. Lena swerved, narrowly avoiding a rock slide as the road narrowed. "We're not going to make it," she yelled. "Turn here." Sophia pointed to a barely visible trail leading into the forest. Lena cranked the wheel, and the truck veered off-road, bouncing violently as it plowed through the underbrush. The SUVs couldn't follow, their bulk too unwieldy for the narrow path. When they finally stopped, the sisters sat in stunned silence, the truck's engine ticking as it cooled. "What now?" Sophia asked, her voice shaking. Lena pulled out her map, her finger tracing a route to a cave marked with a rune. "We find the key before they do." The Cave of Runes. The cave entrance was hidden behind a waterfall, its roar deafening as the sisters slipped behind the curtain of water. Inside, the air was damp and cold, the walls glistening with mineral deposits. Their flashlights illuminated ancient carvings depicting wolves, chains, and a massive tree that could only be Yggdrasil. "This is it," Lena said, her voice reverent. "The key has to be here." They moved deeper into the cave, the passage narrowing until they had to crawl on hands and knees. The sound of dripping water echoed around them, each drop a countdown in Sophia's mind. Finally, they emerged into a cavern so vast their flashlights couldn't penetrate the darkness above. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested the object they had seen on the altar. Sophia approached cautiously, her heart hammering in her chest. The object was a metal shard, jagged and pulsing with a faint blue light. Runes etched into its surface seemed to shift and writhe as she stared at them. "Don't touch it," Lena warned, but it was too late. Sophia's fingers brushed the shard, and a searing pain shot through her hand. She screamed, yanking it back, but the damage was done. The cavern began to tremble, chunks of rock falling from the ceiling. "The awakening." "Run," Lena shouted, grabbing Sophia's arm. They sprinted back through the tunnel as the cave collapsed around them. By the time they burst into the open air, they were gasping for breath, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat. "What did you do?" Lena demanded, but Sophia couldn't answer. Her hand was glowing faintly, the same eerie blue as the shard. Before they could process what had happened, the roar of an engine snapped their attention to the road. The hooded figures were back, and this time, they weren't alone. A massive wolf, its fur black as midnight and eyes like molten gold, stepped out of the trees, its growl reverberating through the ground. "Fenrir," Lena whispered, her face ashen. "They've already begun."